Hey guys, Michael Hyatt here. If you're watching the rebroadcast, thanks so much. By the way, you can still give me hearts if you're watching this in replay. Just tap on the screen. Periscope allows you to give up to 500 hearts per session. So don't leave any on the table. Get your money's worth. Give all the hearts you can. Great to see you guys. This is the Virtual Mentor Show. My goal is to give you the clarity, the confidence, and the tools you need to succeed or to win at work and to succeed at life. I almost said it backwards. To win at work and to succeed at life. And today we're going to be talking about infidelity. It's a tough subject. I wrote on it today at my blog. You can find it at michaelhyatt.com. It's the lead article today. It's gotten about twice the traffic I normally get. And it's obviously a hot topic, particularly in the wake of the Ashley Madison scandal. And so I want to talk a little bit about that today as well. How you guys doing? Where are you from? North Carolina, New Jersey? Lana from Orlando? Somebody said, thanks for talking about this. Taryn from Indiana? San Diego, Los Angeles, Kevin from Texas, Maine, Tacoma, Washington, Iowa, New Jersey, Houston, Winnipeg, North Carolina, Tampa Bay. Basically, hashtag all over. It's great to have you guys. You got a big weekend planned? I'm really excited. I'm going to go to that new Meryl Streep movie this afternoon or this evening with Gail, and then we're going to go out to dinner. We're doing this with a longtime couple friend of ours, and really looking forward to the movie and just spending some time with them. So what do you got planned? In the U.S., this is Labor Day weekend. For us, it's a 3-day weekend, but what do you got planned? Somebody says go into a local winery. Somebody from Anchorage, Alaska. My brother lives in Kenai. You know where that is? Long weekend in Canada. Somebody said it's a great movie. Fantastic. Boating in the lake. Fishing. Love fishing. Rugby. Work. Oh no, not work. Cookout and football. doTERRA convention. I have a bunch of my girls going to the doTERRA convention themselves. 3 of them in my family are part of the doTERRA organization. Opening my tour of Schoolhouse Rock Live, painting the house and layout for a magazine. UT football. Yeah. All right. Well, guys, again, my name is Michael Hyatt. If you don't know me, I'm the author of Platform Get Noticed in a Noisy World. I also blog over at michaelhyatt.com. I've got a podcast called This Is Your Life, which is in the iTunes self-help section. And if you want to find it, just go to iTunes, search for my name, Hyatt, and it'll come right up. And I'd love for you to subscribe to the podcast. I'd love for you to subscribe to my email newsletter. And you can find that at michaelhyatt.com. Also, there's just you'll see it. I mean, it's very prominent right there on the page. But I've got an ebook that I'd love to give you for free. It's called Shave 10 Hours Off Your Work Week. Why? So you can get the margin you need so you don't have to work on the weekend. And in that book, I tell you about a bunch of different ways on how to shave 10 hours off your work week so that you can get that kind of margin. Hey, Marissa, good to see you. She's my youngest daughter, also on the way to the doTERRA convention, but she's posting links here. Somebody said, I have a pleasant voice. Thank you. By the way, today I'm not using my microphone, and I'm doing that on purpose because some people were saying that it was clipping, and I don't know if it was too close to my voice or if I don't have it set right or whatever, but does this sound okay? Give me some hearts if my voice sounds okay and you can hear me fine. Tony says yes. Dewey says yes. Laura says yes. Okay, yes, sir. Fantastic. All right. Okay, so let's talk about a tough subject. You guys ready for this? Can you handle it? Can you handle tough subjects? If you can handle them, tell me yes. Because I don't want to cover this. If you guys are just looking for fluff, something easy, no, I didn't think that was the kind of person you were. You're willing to handle tough stuff. I want you to know my heart, first of all. I do want to talk about adultery or infidelity and what the true cost is on that, because I've seen it destroy a lot of people, including a couple of my best friends, and I've seen it destroy a lot of families, people that I care about, and I've seen the toll it's taken, not only in life, but at work. And I think we've got an epidemic of it. I've been married for 37 years, thankfully to one woman, Gail, and we have a fantastic marriage. It's not always been that way. You know, we've had times when we've fought, when we've had conflict, when I've wondered if we would make it. But when I said I do at the altar 37 years ago, I meant it. You know, I took a stand for this woman in sickness and health, in poverty and wealth. But when you stand for someone, that's different than trying to stay married or trying to make it work. And I want to give you that distinction. I made this in my mentoring group this week. By the way, this scope is going to go for about 30 minutes, and the first 15 of it's going to be straight content. And then I'm going to get to questions, your questions and your comments, okay? So at my mentoring group, I try to make a distinction this week between what I called trying to and standing for. Two different relationships that we have to people, to our goals, to the things that matter most. When you're trying to accomplish something, there's a sense in which, like James Ray says, that's like failure with honor, you know, because at least you can say, well, I tried, you know, I tried to make it work. But when you're standing for something, and give me some hearts if you believe this, when you're standing for something, it means you're committed no matter what. And I think that one of the great things about marriage, at least as I understand it, is that when two people get married, they've decided they're going to stand for the other person. They're going to stand for that other person's best self. They're going to stand for their best relationship. They're going to stand for a great marriage. They're not going to merely try, but they're going to stand for it. And when they encounter difficulty, and by the way, you're going to encounter difficulty in any relationship. You know, I just had lunch with my oldest daughter, Megan, and I don't think she'd mind me telling you this, but we had a little bit of a conflict yesterday. And we had a disagreement over something, and it got emotional. Fortunately, we had a meeting, so we couldn't resolve it. It gave us a chance to cool down. And so then we had lunch today and just talked it through. And one of the things I said to her, and that I love about her, and that I love about my wife, Gail, is that when you're willing to confront conflict, when you're willing to go through that, it's like a doorway to deeper levels of intimacy. And if you're unwilling to deal with conflict, if you're afraid of it, if you back away from it, you'll never get to those deeper levels of intimacy. And so this is something I think we need to relearn as a culture. We need to relearn as people to be brave, to be courageous, and to stand for the people we love. Now, what happens sometimes is when we fail to deal with conflict, we put ourselves in a vulnerable position where we might commit adultery. We might find somebody else. And I'm going to tell you why that's a bad idea. You guys, and this was really brought to the fore, I'm scrolling up here on the blog post itself. I'm going to quote from it. But you guys know about Ashley Madison. I never heard of this site until I read about it in the newspaper. And, you know, it was a site basically that connected people who wanted to have an affair. So people that, it was like a dating site, but for married people. The only problem was their database got compromised, and all the names of the people who were signed up, including people like, what's his name, Josh Duggar, were outed. And as a result of that, there have been a lot of divorces. There's been a couple of suicides. People's lives were devastated when they were outed. You know, and in a sense, it's inevitable. You know, if we'll live our lives as though a hot spotlight could be shown on any aspect of our life at any time, I think we live better stories, frankly. I remember when I became the CEO of Thomas Nelson Publishers, my predecessor said to me, he said, just remember this, in every decision you make, what would it look like if it ended up on the front page of the Wall Street Journal? You know, that's the kind of life you want to live, so that if whatever ended up there, you'd be proud of it. Somebody said we must be open to one another. Absolutely. You know, having an open heart toward your spouse is so important. When you shut down, that's another warning sign. That's another thing that can lead to adultery and betrayal and all the rest. Yeah, somebody just said, Ignite Hope says, your sins will find you out. Yeah, it's a saying from the Bible, and it's really true. Let me just block some clown here. Evidently, we occasionally get these 14-year-old kids in here that don't have any sense. And I don't mean to disrespect to 14-year-old kids. But yeah, what's done in secret always comes to light. So I want to talk about some of the high cost of adultery, because it's in some ways kind of an original sin because betrayal is essentially what happens, or what people feel like they're betrayed when somebody that they love, somebody that they've committed their trust to, betrays that trust and does something in secret, something they're probably not particularly proud of themselves, but it can be devastating. So here's 8 costs. Number 1, infidelity will inevitably cost you your reputation. It will. I mean, look at the people who have been outed by Ashley Madison now and whose reputations have been devastated. And it could really, really hurt you in terms of your reputation. It's not quite, like wearing the scarlet A, but people know it. And people know that when there's been an adultery or been an infidelity, they wonder, can I trust you? Your reputation is dinged. Second reason, it might cost you your job, especially depending on who it was. If you had an affair with an intern or you had an affair with a subordinate, it could be interpreted as sexual aggression and inappropriate in the workplace and could ultimately cost you your job. And depending on the company policy or company politics, it could wreak havoc on your career. It inevitably would leave you having to do a lot of explaining to coworkers who just don't get it. And in a way, you're forcing them to choose sides. Third reason you don't want to have an affair is it'll cost you money. I mean, duh. Divorce is expensive, profoundly expensive. But giving up half of everything you own, half your income, all the rest, most of the people I know that have gone through a divorce have way underestimated the cost. And it's had an impact that's lasted for years, taken them years to dig out from the debt and the catastrophic financial implications of divorce. So it can cost you real money. Another cost, this is number 5. Actually, this is number 4. It's probably going to cost you your family, And 2/3 of the marriages where there's been an affair end in divorce. And you can understand why. Some couples are able to work through to forgiveness. Good for them. I know a couple of couples like that. Actually, people who have an incredible marriage ministry now. But those are the exception. Most of the times it ends in a divorce. Not to mention that when you have an affair, what does it do to your children? And I know of situations today where people who have had an affair are still estranged from their adult children because the kids didn't understand. And the kids don't forgive easily. And sometimes it takes years and sometimes even decades for it to be repaired or to be restored. Another cost, number 6, it can really cost you your emotional health. When you're not living in the light, when you're not living an honest life, when you're kind of operating in the shadows and going behind closed doors and suppressing guilt and dealing with shame, shame is like one of the worst possible things to your emotional health. And people who are involved in adultery, inevitably it creates shame and it takes a toll on their emotional health. And it can lead to sickness and all other kinds of things. Number 7, it can cost you your legacy. Yesterday, how many you were on the Scope yesterday and saw my grandson Lincoln? Did you see that? I mean, he's like one of the cutest kids. I mean, honestly, I've got 8 grandkids. They're all cute, right? And every grandparent thinks their kids are the cutest. I'm no exception. But Lincoln is so cute, and he was awesome. But let me tell you something. I don't want to be remembered by Lincoln as somebody that betrayed their grandmother. I don't want to be remembered by even generations beyond that as somebody who was unfaithful to his wife. And most of all, I want to be somebody that they respect because I kept my word, that I was faithful even when it's difficult. And it's not always easy. I totally get that. But it's a gift that we give to our children. It's the most important legacy, I think, that we can give to our children and our grandchildren is a healthy marriage. I want my children to be able to say, and I want my grandchildren to be able to say, my dad wasn't perfect. He made a lot of mistakes, but he loved our mother. He loved our grandmother. He was faithful to her. He adored her. My predecessor at Thomas Nelson was a man by the name of Sam Moore. And Sam's wife is named Peggy, and he used to come into work. And if you brought her up in a conversation, they've been married like 60 years or something, and you bring her name up in a conversation, he would just light up like a light bulb. And he would say, you know what? I hate to leave her in the morning when I come to work, and I can't wait to see her when I go home. And I thought, how precious to be married all those decades and to still be in love. That, my friends, is a legacy like none other. And he's giving that to his children, to his children's children, and now even has great-grandkids. Awesome. The eighth reason is it may even cost your soul. I don't know what your faith perspective is. Don't read into this more than what I'm saying, but it's a sober warning. You know, adultery, infidelity, betrayal is something that has an impact on our spiritual life. It destroys the very essence of who we are as made in the image of God. So I don't want this to be a downer. I guess what I'm really arguing is that marriage is really worth it. And if you're tempted to betray your spouse, if you're tempted by a momentary affair, just realize, you know, the grass is always greener on the other side of the fence. But once you get over there, it still has to be mowed. You know, relationships are tough. And you may be going through difficulties with your spouse right now. And here's what I want to tell you. Your marriage is worth fighting for. The people you love or loved in the past, they're worth fighting for. And don't be guilty of what so often happens where people think in our culture is that love is a feeling you feel when you feel like you're going to get a feeling you've never felt before. That is not love. You want me to say that again? Some people think that love is a feeling you feel when you feel like you're going to get a feeling you've never felt before. But the problem is that's transient. Real love is action. It means that I have the courage when I feel us drifting apart, that I take a big step in Gail's direction, that I fight for the marriage because I realize that if I want intimacy, and probably that's the impulse that's behind every affair, if I want real intimacy, it's far easier, far more beneficial, and far better that I invest in my current relationship rather than pursuing another one. Okay, comments. Somebody said 17 and counting. I'm assuming that is grandkids, and congratulations to you. Fight for your marriage. Yes, Lyndon. This scope, Ron says, needs to be on national television. America needs to hear it. Well, thank you very much. I really believe in this stuff. And unfortunately, I've seen too many of my friends just be wounded and wound others through this. I'm in my first year of marriage. Any advice? Yeah. Stay in the conversation. Here's the deal. You're going to inevitably hurt one another's feelings. And you're going to be tempted not to talk about it. You're going to be tempted to withdraw and move away from each other. And what I want to suggest is that whether you're, whatever your role is in the marriage, whether you're the man or the woman, what I want to encourage you to do is take a deep breath and take the initiative to move toward your spouse. And in fact, Gail and I really believe that the initiative is always ours. So whether we've been hurt or whether we've done the hurting, the initiative to make it right is always ours. The first move is always ours. Yeah, Robert says, read His Needs, Her Needs, How to Affair-Proof Your Marriage. That's a great, great book. I love that book. Another book that would be really helpful to you is Love and Respect by Emerson Eggerichs. Emerson Eggerichs, Love and Respect. Look it up on Amazon. Advice, don't need to be right. So true. I remember, in fact, I did an interview this morning on marriage, so it's really on my heart today. But I did an interview this morning, and the guy was talking about, you know, when you're arguing, it's so easy to get caught up in the heat of the moment and try to prove your point. Have you ever been guilty of that? I have. Maybe it's a man thing. I don't know. But yeah, it's like, no, I didn't mean it that way, and I'm going to prove my point. I remember watching Dr. Phil one day, and I rarely ever watch Dr. Phil. Some of you are thinking, yeah, right. No, seriously, I rarely watch him. But I caught this one episode where he was talking to this guy, and there was a conflict between this man and his wife. And so he was going on and on about why she had misunderstood, she misinterpreted, that's not what he meant. And finally, Dr. Phil, exasperated, he says this. He says, look, buddy, here's the deal. You can be right or you can be happy. Pick one. And it's so true. Yeah, somebody said, I love Dr. Phil. What can you do if you already start that wrong path? Man, I would get help. If you're on that wrong path, if you've already initiated an affair, or even if it's just at an emotional level, I think it's to push the pause button. You're about to make an exchange that will cost you like no other decision you'll ever make in your life. And the problem is, it feels like it's rewarding because I'm telling you, it's activating your brain. You know, it's releasing hormones into your body, and you're not thinking clearly. That's the bottom line. You need to get help. Find somebody that you can confide in and say, help me, because I'm about to do something that's going to cost me everything. And it will. Don't think you're the exception. You're not. Yeah, it's chemical, absolutely. 1 year into second marriage after 30 years of divorce, address second marriage issues, baggage. Yeah, well, first of all, I'm no expert on this. But I know that second marriages are more difficult to sustain than first marriages. More of them end up in divorce. So you've got to confront the issues. Again, I really believe in coaching. I really believe in bringing in outside resources. And I think if I was involved in a second marriage, and by the way, I know the divorce happens. I'm not here to condemn you. I'm not here to make you feel bad or feel shame about that. But I am here to say that if you're in that situation and you're struggling, bring in some outside resources because there probably is some baggage that needs to be addressed. And you probably just need a skilled counselor that can help you walk through that, particularly so that you can complete the past and not drag it into the new relationship. Linda says, our pastor helped save our marriage. Awesome. I've been on the side of a failing marriage with much work. God worked a miracle for us. Awesome. It causes so much pain to the whole family. Absolutely. Matt says, my dad cheated, destroyed our family, unreal costs. Again, Michael, thank you for talking about it. I know a lot of children, adult children now, whose one or both of their parents got involved in infidelity. Devastated. I mean, to this day, they can't talk about it without crying. And I just don't want to do that to my children. It's not worth it for, quote, my pleasure. Tony says, why do you think many pastors are falling into this trap? I think probably because anybody that's in a helping profession, two things happen. One, it's really easy to get burned out, especially if you're not practicing an appropriate level of self-care. So you get burned out, you get emotionally depleted, and you go for the quick fix. Plus, you're in relationship with other people, oftentimes in intimate situations where it's just easy. You know, proximity is a huge problem. If you go to the wrong places, like Ashley Madison, if you're in proximity to other people who are trolling, you're much more likely to get an affair, right? And so I think pastors have to be particularly careful. Natasha says, how does a relationship overcome an act of cheating? Okay, so like there's one message for the people that are contemplating an affair, and I've just given you that. But what if you're in a marriage where your spouse cheated on you? Well, I think first of all, this has been like a theme all week, you got to speak the truth in love. I'm not expecting you to do, one or the other. But this is going to be hard. This may be the most difficult thing you've ever done, to forgive that other person. Now, you may decide, because maybe that other person isn't remorseful or repentant or not willing to change, you may just decide that you've got to divorce them. I mean, I get that. But that doesn't mean you can't forgive them, okay? So forgiveness, here's what the word forgiveness means. It means to release someone else from the consequence of their sin. In other words, they don't have to personally satisfy you. They're probably going to pay consequences anyway. But here's what unforgiveness is like, and this isn't original with me. Somebody else said this. It's like drinking poison, unforgiveness, and expecting the other person to die. That's not what happens. When we hold a grudge, when we are unforgiving, it hurts us. So even for the sake of your own emotional well-being, your own health, you need to forgive that other person. But that doesn't necessarily mean they're safe and you can invite them back into your life. That takes a lot of work. And frankly, unless that other person, your spouse, is willing to do that work, I don't know that I would advise to stay in the marriage. I think you got to use the leverage of that betrayal to say, look, buddy, you need help. We need professional help. And if this marriage has a chance of surviving, you're going to have to change. I probably also need to change, but we've got to get some outside resources and help fix this for the sake of our family, for the sake of everything that we hold dear. And that's just what's necessary. So in sickness and in health, sometimes it really is a sickness. Yeah, sometimes it is. And, only you can decide in those situations. I would do it with a lot of counsel. But it's a two-way street. Both must want to go for counseling. Totally agree with that. It's usually not just one person who sins, if you want to use that term, or who goes astray, but there's usually a family context. Marissa says, stand for your marriage and the other person, even when they don't stand for themselves. Absolutely. This is a huge relational tool that I use and believe in. And that's this idea, again, going back to the first, when I talked about this, standing for other people. David says, wow, dude, bold topic. Yeah, some things just need to be said. Thanks, man. Just caught my wife cheating. His wife called me. I can't even imagine what that would be like. How devastating that must be. And my advice to you would be, don't gloss that over. Grieve that. Get help. If both are willing to change, you'd be surprised what can happen to your marriage. Yeah, I know a couple where there was a double infidelity. She had an affair, and then he had a revenge affair. And you know what? They got totally reconciled, and they're in a marriage ministry today helping people like crazy. They've completely healed it. Their kids are fine. All of it's been worked out. But I'm going to tell you something. It took an enormous amount of work and commitment on everybody's part. Other questions? We got just a few minutes here. Any other questions? Yes, Ambassador Moore says, for every temptation, there's a way of escape. Absolutely. Are emotional affairs better or worse than physical? Well, I do think when you add the physical component, it makes it even more complex. I don't think emotional affairs are necessarily better, but they're easier to extract yourself from, and they do less damage. Once you get to the physical level, which probably also has an emotional component to it, that's tough. Yeah, Terry says, I hear you, so sad. Remarriage, not sure what you're asking there. Men shut down. Emotional affairs, somebody says are worst. Just Christia says that. Maybe. I don't know. How's Gail doing today? She's doing great. She's in the house, and I just saw her. She was working away at her desk, and we're going out with some friends tonight, going to a movie, the new Meryl Streep movie, and then we're going to dinner with some friends. Susan, couldn't find your reading list on your blog. Go to the store. Well, first of all, in the search bar, if you search for reading, you can search there and you'll find my reading list. Like I think I have one called my 37 famous or favorite business books of all time. You can also go to the store and my recommended books are there too. What do you think about remarriage according to the Bible? Yeah, I think that's a big topic I don't want to comment on right now because I've got a minute left. Healing is possible, but hard. Wow, forgiveness plus love is the way. David, you're exactly right. It is possible, but it takes two to tango. Sorry, I was just blocking somebody else. Thank you for this. We do marriage scopes, and I've learned more from this scope. Awesome. I'm telling you something. Marriage is a foundational pillar of civilization. It's worth fighting for. And that whole standing for situation, I know a lot of people are just today, or especially are just living together. Here's what's missing from that. When you just move in with somebody, you're missing that standing for piece of the equation. When you get married, you are saying, I'm making a covenant with God, with you, and I'm going to stand for this no matter what. Even in sickness and in health, even in poverty and in wealth, I'm going to stand for. And sometimes those relationships don't work out. In fact, most of them don't work out. Why? Because nobody's standing for the other person. And it's the missing ingredient. That's why the cake goes flat. That's why those relationships don't survive. Well, guys, listen, I don't know how much of the day you have left, whether it's a few hours or like me, living in Central Daylight Time Zone in the U.S., I've got pretty much the rest of the afternoon and the evening. And for me and for you, it's a blank canvas. You can paint on it whatever you want. You can make this a great day, or you can make it a lousy day. I hope you'll choose to make it a great day. It's worth it. You're worth it. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you on Monday.